Well, hello everyone. This is Pastor Brian here, and I'm here with Ronnie, and this is our Wednesday night broadcast. And so we're delighted to be with you. Those of you that are members of OBC, of course, know Ronnie, and she needs no introduction. Those of you that may be visiting or guest here, Ronnie's just an all-around cool person, but she's nationally certified and state licensed counselor, and she leads an organization called Apricity. I think I got that right, Wellness Counseling. And so, Ronnie, thanks for your time being here. We appreciate you so much. We're here to talk about the topic of how to adjust to all the changes that are going on and how we can even not just survive these changes, but thrive personally during these changes. And so who better to talk with than Ronnie? So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Ronnie. So it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you're able to tune in. So yes, these times are different for us all. And one thing is to remember when you're thinking about your daily routine and how it has changed, some things that might be coming up for you, a guide is routine does not mean permanent. And just because you have a routine, it doesn't mean that it's guaranteed. And so remember that there is nothing new under the sun, first and foremost, that the world has seen this before. The world has been there before. And it doesn't mean that you're not supposed to care about it, but what you have control over is how you move through this time. And so if you just think, and even in our recent history where some of our members and some people watching may remember very, very well, and some of us just know from talking to other loved ones who have been here. And when you think about just World War II, the amount of changes that it made for the world, but even for this country, for the way of life. And yet we, other generations and the generations that literally lived through it, continued. And it doesn't mean that it is easy. It doesn't mean that it doesn't carry emotions. But what it does mean is that you have the power within of how you're going to move through this time. The world has seen the bubonic plague. The world has seen yellow fever. The world has seen typhoid, even here in this country. So we've even been here with viruses before that could, when we now look back in hindsight, can label some as pandemics and other as severe epidemics for a country or more. Just a year and a half ago, Brazil battled Zika, which infected millions upon millions in that country. So I just share that to say, we are, as organisms and as beautifully created from the Lord, resilient beings, and we can adjust. So I just wanted to really just start with that when we cling on to our routine, what are you really clinging on to? And what then are you closing your mind and your heart to? So I would like to share with you, when you think about this as your daily routine is changing, there's a way that you think about it that could be either empowering or destructive. And one way to think about it in an empowering way is, this is new time. This is gained time. This is time that I don't ordinarily have. How do I want to use it? Because that's where you have control and power. What you don't have control over is when and what stores will be open. You don't have control over just the many things that we do enjoy in life, of if they're going to be here or not. It makes me think of, in career counseling, we often ask, in some of the dynamics of career counseling, we ask some of the clients, if what you're doing right now vanishes tomorrow, it just doesn't exist, what would you be doing? And we do this because it's a way to just remind how a lot of things that we get used to are just not permanent. And we have power into what we can focus on. And so when you understand the possibilities that are still in existence, it can diminish some of the anxieties, some of the fear, and some of the worries. Now, I'm not negating the fact that there are financial concerns that people have. And I'm not going to act like a reporter, because that's not my job, and I'm not going to act like a politician, because that's not what I chose to be. So I'm not going to make a big, broad brush over everyone's circumstances. We are all dealing with this in different ways, and there are some commonalities that we have, but even within the commonalities, there are immense differences. For example, we have parents that are finding their children home, some from daycare. Some home daycares are still open, but home from daycare, home from school. But then you have parents in varying situations. You have some that are still going to work out of being mandated or just have the ability to go to work. You have parents that are going to work, but then they have increased exposure to this current coronavirus because of the nature of their work. You have parents that have to work from home and also navigate now a very different home life. And you have parents that may be working from home, managing their children and possibly managing an adult, elderly family member that's in the home, or having to manage care for a family member that's not in their home. And then now this has compounded difficulties in how do you stay connected, stay informed, and stay involved with someone that you have care that you're responsible for. So just keep in mind, no circumstance is exactly alike, but we do have incredible commonalities, but within those commonalities, there are severe differences. So in this gain time, where your control is thinking about, how do I want to use this? What is the routine that I can establish for right now? And knowing that the routine that you can establish now may not continue when things change again, because we don't know how they're going to change. But you don't need to think 3 weeks from now and 5 months from now, but right now in the situation that you're in, for what you do know, how would you like to move about your life? How would you like to spend your energy and utilize your energy right now? So thinking about, when am I waking up? What am I doing? And as Christians, have you evaluated and checked in on your prayer life, your relationship with the Lord, and the things that you can be doing in that scope? Are there ways that you would like to spend your day that you don't normally get to do because of the routine that you were used to? So how can things be reconstructed? Being very mindful of what supports do you need in order to develop these routines for however your household is constructed and whatever all your responsibilities are that continue to persist and exist. Also, I know a lot of Christians may be hearing a lot of statements right now that are helpful in one regard and might not feel as helpful right now in another regard, because it depends on the meaning that you put to it. So a lot of Christians may be hearing, why are you worried? Worry about nothing, pray about everything. Now, we were given that message for a very particular reason. So first and foremost, you have to check in and understand, pray about everything. Well, what is prayer, and who are you praying to? And if you're praying to the Lord God, if you're praying through Jesus Christ and understanding that he is the way, the truth, and the light, and if you know that he holds the keys to heaven, which is where you are trying to go, then you understand that who you are praying towards. And you understand that Jesus Christ already understood all of these pains that we are enduring right now. So you're also understanding that you're going to a being, you're going to a supreme being, you're going to our Creator, who understands us more than we understand ourselves, who is actually there to listen and calm these fears, but more the next step, to give us guidance. And this is why that saying of worry about nothing, pray about everything becomes important. When we are stressed and when we have anxieties just surmounting within us, we produce cortisol in our body, which produces inflammation, and it gets harder to think. And we also are jeopardizing other systems, our heart and our joints, our lungs. And so we can create an unhealthy situation for our bodies. So in the process of fervent, faithful prayer, we literally can reduce our stress. We can reduce the cortisol. It will have a physical as well as spiritual reaction, which then will open up our pathways to be able to think and receive the message from the Lord. Because when we were highly stressed, even when we think we're going to God, we cannot receive that message from the Lord if it's blocked by stress and anxiety. So understanding that phrase is important, but it only becomes useful when you truly understand the meaning and the deep meaning behind it and how to use it.
It's all good.
So remember also in these times, yes.
I wanted to chime in because a lot of people right now, in light of all the uncertainty and all the changes they're dealing with, and we don't even know when this is going to end and when this is going to stop. A lot of people are having a hard time focusing on anything, so what would you say to them? So.
Thank you. I agree. And remember, you're getting messages from sensationalized media. And if you notice, even when some of the reporters seem to be sympathetic, if you listen to the intonations in their voice, it is inciting a fear reaction in you. It can, or anxiety. Family members that are telling you, oh, these times, or people might be reaching out in love to check on you, but they're constantly saying, in these times, in these hard times. And that's where you want to remember that, well, this is probably not the first time you've been through a hard time. So that's good reflection for yourself, kind of like how I even started off. Think about your life over a course of time, and life has never been ultimately predictable, because that's not what it's about. But if you think about even time, what is time? And how are you using your time, regardless your circumstances? What are you using it for? And it brings us back as Christians. How does God want us to use our time? So if you think about, even if the way of your life right now, if you're feeling disruption, if you're feeling an unease of the change that's thrusted upon you, because that is real, to understand, how do you see and how do you know? And if you don't know, how can you gain how God wants you to use this time? Because we're only granted every second that we breathe. And we don't know how many seconds we are going to have. And I purposely say seconds, because a lot of times people say, oh, well, you have the day. Well, some people will not finish today, and that's a reality. So you have the second. What can you do with that second? And if your ultimate goal is to be able to walk into the heaven, to continuously be in God's kingdom, to be able to praise the Lord for all eternity, if that is your ultimate goal, that starts with the very second that you have. And so how are you praising God through all this? How are you allowing God to use you in all this? Because trust me, the Lord's work, it still needs to be done, no matter the circumstances around you. So how is He calling you to be used?
When I was in seminary, I had a professor that said, worship is the one thing we're going to be doing for all eternity.
Yes.
It's like a lot of the stuff that we do for the Lord right now, we're not going to need to do in heaven, but worship is forever. And so we might as well take this time now and start worshiping, get the practice in and stuff.
Revelations definitely reiterates that over and over again, all the worship that we have today.
Right. I do want to ask too, a lot of people I think are struggling, and there's a couple levels to this and that is people struggling with loneliness during this time. On the softer level, you've got people that are more extroverted that just thrive being around people, and now they're having to kind of hunker down. So that's hard on them. But then on a more serious note, there are some people that are really struggling with loneliness, and maybe already were struggling with loneliness, and this has just exacerbated that. So what can you say to encourage them?
I agree with that, and thank you for that, because you have some people that are more either introverted or have been working from home for such a long time. They're like, I got this. Yeah. I'm okay. I already have the practice for it. And that is true. And there are people that are thrust into the reduction of communication, or now, even if they, like you said, were already battling with feeling lonely, and now they have more limitations on how they can connect with others. And so first I'm going to start off with one, and then I'm going to branch into even as a Christian. So for one, just like now, you see this, we're doing this through Zoom. You have so many platforms to connect with other people that you know. I mean, I would say start with people that you know, that are healthy for you, that you can even if it's to laugh, joke, discuss a movie, discuss a sermon, this is a great time. So I am going Christian quicker than I was about to, because it's always intertwined. When's the last actual book within the Bible that you read that then you can go on and connect with someone virtually and discuss it, study together, or have a rich discussion about it? So there's so many ways to connect, and I can name 5 platforms, and then there's probably 30 more, right? And so you have Zoom, you have Skype, you have Google Hangouts, you have, the list goes on and on, to ways that you can, in real time, connect with another being. You have FaceTime and a whole lot of other apps and applications with WhatsApp that you really can have this. So no, you might not be in the same room as the person, but remember, if you're not quarantined, it's social distancing, which means if someone else has not been exposed, you can invite them over your house. And I would say, keep working with the CDC guidelines. Right now, we're still saying 10 or less. So be safe. Have no more than 6 in your home. Have everyone come in, wipe their feet on that doormat, take off their shoes, even if you're a household that doesn't normally take off the shoes, because remember, you're bringing things in from the outside, leave the shoes at the door, and immediately everyone needs to wash their hands, right? Have some hand sanitizer around, but remember, the soap and water is better than hand sanitizer, just to remind everyone we're talking about that. And then you can have a game night. You can have game time, movie time, discussion time, a combination of 3. Have everyone wash their hands before putting on the shoes and wish everyone well. Pray together before going out that door. So there are ways to still connect. For those that were experiencing bouts of loneliness before, have you talked to neighbors? Remember, you can even step outside your door and still have a distance conversation, but still be in safe contact with another being, and then I would say, in a very pure human being, in a very pure Christianity soul sense, if you truly have a relationship with the Lord and with Jesus, you are never alone. And there's so much trueness to that. And those that have been stranded on hikes where they got disoriented and lost, on mountains, and a lot of times you talk about if you're stranded on a desert island, but there have been real life situations, and not people have been stranded on islands, but real life that people can really picture even now, where they've gone on a hike and have been lost for days. And those that have a strong faith and faith and fellowship with the Lord, they didn't feel lonely. They come out talking about that, how very connected they felt. So remember that in this time, if you are experiencing that, have you checked in on your relationship with the Lord? What are you doing to grow that relationship? Because first and foremost, who are you living for? Mm-hmm. And that is really important to really understand about loneliness and understand, like, what are you saying to yourself if you feel lonely, and what's not happening in your life? Because if there's a deeper level of loneliness, of that's a disconnect or a frayed connection from the Lord, there's no amount of people on this world that's actually going to fulfill that feeling that you're trying to see. Yeah. There's a lot of truth in that.
We try a lot to get other human beings to meet needs that God Himself is equipped to meet. We do that a lot. You talked about some specific suggestions on what people can do, and it kind of leads to my next question, because everything's changing day by day, and certain options that were available to us yesterday are not available to us, today or tomorrow. And we don't even know, like right now, we're still allowed to have gatherings of under 10 people, but that could change. I mean, so how do people combat this restlessness and this anxiety, and when even they can't even land on a routine because they don't know what's going to change tomorrow? That makes sense,
It does.
So, how do you deal with that ever changing, when options are disappearing, daily, so.
Yeah, so a couple of things, and that's very true. So one, when you think about how do I even establish this routine if tomorrow the routine can change, that is where you grow your skill of flexibility, to be honest. Yeah. And so some people have an incredible skill set of flexibility, and some have a very limited, which they're a little bit more rigid. And so when you become more flexible, you become more open to understand, like, this is what I might have planned, but it may not work out that way. So what is option B and option C, and what else can I do? And so the more flexible you are, the more you can adjust when what you have planned or what you have perceived will happen is not going to happen. And so, things are changing daily. And that, remember, is outside of our control. What is in our control is with what we understand, what we can do. Just as an example, I have an aunt who has an amazing talent with crocheting, knitting, sewing, you name it. And right now what she's doing with her talent is making masks for people, right? And for healthcare workers and getting them out in her community, right? So no, she cannot continuously go to the fabric store all the time. And, and know the other crafts that she was doing before, she changed. Even one of I don't want to say his name incorrectly, but one of the famous chefs in DC, he's completely shifted, but he's still giving, because his core nature, even though he has the talent of cooking, and he is cooking for emergency responders and healthcare professionals, but then, so he's That's one. But then he has resources, and he has the spirit of filling needs and being there. And he's continuing with that spirit and just shifting. So it might not always be food, even though he's partially doing that. But how else can my core is about giving. My core is about seeing a need and filling it. How can I still do that? So I would even say with restlessness, right? That means you have skills, you have talent, you have ideas. Well, how are you using them? How have you captured them? How is the Lord telling you to fulfill them? Whether it is, so it goes into a couple of things. If you think about, the Lord has given us all different types of talents for each being. And Pastor, you can elaborate, right? And we even covered it, I think, maybe even last month. The parable that Jesus gave with Master, right? That gave the three, but one buried it, one grew it, right? We're not supposed to bury our talents. We're not supposed to keep them hidden. How are you cultivating the talents that you already know that you have, even in these times? What else can you be doing to continually growing them? So one, you can be ready when the Lord calls you, or you can continuously give and do more as the Lord is asking of you. So remember, don't let your talents and interests go by the wayside. You can start off even by cultivating a list of things that you know that are going on in your community of need, praying on that list and finding out how does the Lord want you to move. Even your own household might need you most right now. How can you be there for them? How can you show up for them in the way that they need you, right? And then what do you have to do for yourself to be able to be there in the way that the Lord needs you to be there for your household? So I would say, yes, it can change from day to day. And part of that is acceptance. Accepting that is your first step. That, you know what? Tomorrow can be different. Tomorrow might be different. Tomorrow most likely will be different. Yep. The more you accept that, the more you can, again, reduce that stress, reduce the cortisol, and keep thinking. And allow the Lord to speak through you and give you the creativity to be productive in this time. There's many ways to be productive, not just one.
I want to just echo that, because on the whole talent thing and flexibility goes together, because a lot of us are used to, we're given certain gifts and we're used to delivering those gifts in a certain habit, in a certain way. Yeah. And then when things change, it's like, oh, I can't do that, you know. But I saw on the news the other day about an opera singer in Italy that now gets on his balcony and sings to his entire neighborhood. And his wife has recorded it and put it on YouTube, and it's gone viral, and he was interviewed on the news media. So this is a guy that's used to singing in concert halls, but now he's taking that gift and that ability and using it to bless people that, you know, can't get out, you know. And so, you know, if you're a singer or a musician or whatever, you can record some videos, put it out on YouTube, and you have no idea how many people you might encourage during this time. So pastors are having to readjust and everything and do everything totally different. So it's changes can be exciting. It doesn't have to be limiting, you know. So
yeah. And speaking on that, like there was a DJ that had a dance party on Instagram, and people were loving it. He put it on a mix, and everyone then can, you know, put themselves dancing if they wanted, or just enjoyed it in their privacy. Also, Alvin Ailey, which is a dance company, their dancers have been doing different types of dances throughout their house and making very beautiful videos, you know, of showing like they're still moving, they're still doing it. It's very different because their apartments are a very different space than from the studio and the stage, right? And so learn how you could do it. My very own daughter, who's a ballerina, she has many other talents, and going in and exploring, and you know, we brainstormed a list together, and now, you know, she's focusing on those while she's still staying healthy and, you know, still, you know, being able to be ready for when she's called back. But in the meantime, you know, she knows she just doesn't have one talent, and so she's also cultivating that. And I encourage everyone to, like, what are things that you want to learn? What are things you don't normally have the time to do that you can do now? You know, and how many of us, you know, Christians, that even when you want your Bible reading to be a priority, that life kind of pulls you away from the way that you want to read it. So for some, that might be that you're not reading as much as you would like. For others, it's very hard to get started and get reading. Well, you may have some time now where you can truly put aside, at least today, to do some reading that you've wanted to do.
Let me flip this a little bit and ask, as we're running out of our Zoom allotted time here, but What about those people who have actually found themselves busier during this time? I'm thinking about, of course, our frontline workers, healthcare and law enforcement and, just emergency services, all them, but also parents, who are now having to homeschool, had not been homeschooling before. What do you say to encourage them? It's like they're now busier, they're more stressed than they ever were before. They don't have this time.
Exactly, and I agree with that. And that is important to touch on too, because there are people who have less time now, and they have varying circumstances too. And so, if you find yourself with more time, and or you can reach into your community, you can call your local firehouse, hospital. You can call the police station and find out, are there workers there that are having trouble managing their home life or balancing between their hours that they're now carrying and what their responsibilities are. And then you can find out if there's a way that you can help and that you can add in. Because I was thinking about that even with schools closing. So this is going back to a parent situation, that parent may not be home. So who's now there for their child, right? Is there someone else to step up and be there for their child, so that can be, I'm not going to say the worries off their mind, because when you're a parent, you're always worried about your child, but
Right.
if they know at least they're being taken care of, and then they can now be what they're called to do, whether it's on the front lines or part of the essential working, staff and what have you. If you're finding that you don't have the time and you're busier, checking in with yourself and making sure that you're monitoring, how are you still dealing with everything that's going on and caring for yourself. And sometimes self-care, maybe, you're taking 5 extra minutes in the shower, letting yourself have a bath in the week, getting up maybe 5 minutes earlier and starting with prayer. In other words, doing things that help you maintain a lower stress level and organize your day, like finding out, what do you have control over? Are you using your time wisely? And are you navigating? Again, I can't reiterate this enough. What support do you need? Do you need to speak to a mental health professional? Mental health professionals are still available. Some still have in-office, some are telehealth, some have a combination of the two. And if they have in-office, just ask them, how are they addressing the coronavirus, and let them explain to you how they care for. For me, I wipe down after every single client I disinfect. I was doing this really before the coronavirus, and I'm, continuing it now. Most of us don't have to worry about large groups, because we're usually a one-on-one, or if we're with couples or family, there's really never really more than 6 in a room to begin with. So learning from them, and you can go on Psychology Today to find a therapist, because there's so many ways to sort. And a lot of us, like I said, offer telehealth as well as in-person or combination. Do you need those services? Is there a certain friend or family member that you just need to start the day with or end your day with? And talk to them about that. Is there someone that you really need in your home to help you out? Be honest with yourself. You are not alone. We're not meant to do life, without support. So be honest if you need support, and share that. Don't keep it to yourself. Someone might not know how to check in with you, because maybe they perceive you. This is something that perceived strong people have to deal with all the time. Oh, they have it together. They don't need me. So you know what? Instead of waiting for someone to ask, just inform your trusted circle what you need. Turn to your church and tell them what you need, and they'll see they can help you, or at least brainstorm how, the supports can arrive.
What about, I know you've worked with young people a lot, and what would you say to a teenager right now who's upset that the rest of the school year has been canceled, and in Maryland, and the rest of the school year has been canceled, or they're looking at that. Virginia just canceled the rest of the school year, but
so we're talking about a lot of loss.
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of loss.
How would you help a teenager through that, or a parent of a teenager?
So we're talking about loss of prom. We're talking about loss of graduation. We're talking about loss of even birthday parties that are going on. And just to be honest, step outside of adolescence, people are not having their weddings right now, and funerals have even changed. And these are, these are ceremonies. These are ways that we express different joys and sorrows within our life. So remember, this is impacting a lot. But to our adolescents, to our teenagers, to our teens, to our young children, where you may have been looking forward to the fourth quarter activities, is really what that's about. The end of the year dances, the prom, graduation, especially prom and graduation that are hard. That's a one time, where at least end of the year you can get that again next year. But the prom and graduation is not something you basically get back.
Yeah.
One thing that to remember, you yourself are not experiencing this. Every senior, so when I'm talking right now for prom, that has a state that is shutting down is also experiencing this. So also every senior in your high school. And I was thinking about this, and it is sad. It is sad. I mean, that's something you're looking forward to. But one thing you can do is, keep abreast of what's going on. And maybe for right now, start with connecting with your student government inside your school and seeing if there's a way to start making plans for later in the summer before everyone goes off to college. So maybe it's not the prom that would have happened in April or June, but maybe there's some type of prom you guys can have in August, in the beginning of August, because that might be a possibility, and it might not. And so maybe your first reunion is in a 10-year reunion. Maybe it's a 1-year reunion, and that's prom. And so get creative is what I'm trying to say about how it can still happen, but yet the timeline of it is going to change. Recognize of how you feel, and that is important. And what's most important, don't stay in those downward feelings. Just keep thinking about, like, well, what else can I do? And what else can happen this time to commemorate my hard work, if you were hardworking, because we always like to say that, but we all know. Some students can start working a little harder. You know that you're that student. Maybe now is also a time where you can correct some of your studying behaviors to prepare for what can be the next chapter in your life. But for the fun parts of celebrating the end of high school, what else can you do right now? And be creative with all the platforms that exist, and with fitting within CDC guidelines. Are there things that you can do in a creative way to still commemorate high school coming to an end?
In the very limited time we have left on the recording here, and it's Zoom that's limiting our time here, so to be clear on that. But Ronnie, thank you for this call. But you mentioned about people grieving right now for different things, and we certainly don't want people to camp out in those negative emotions. But at the same time, you and I've talked many times, people need to be able to grieve. And so can you just talk a little bit about what's a healthy way of grieving, a healthy way of processing emotions? Because it is a loss. I mean, if we just had a family in our church lose a father, just the other day, Sunday. And how do you grieve during COVID-19, when that coronavirus is making it even harder for situations like this,
Yeah, and so grief and loss is a way of life, and the Lord has given it to us to be able to process a transition. And so it's important that still is honored. And there's many ways to honor it. So in a healthy way, always being open and honest about your feelings and what you need. And thinking about your rituals that help you through a transition, that help you through a loss. So for some, when it comes to the loss that's in death, what are your rituals? What stories can you tell about that person? What did that person mean to you, and how can you commemorate that right now? And remember that the grieving process is not a one-time event, right? Mourning is usually, there's a difference between mourning and grieving. And mourning is the initial rituals that we take. So usually the wake, the funeral, the burial, and repast, and where everyone's coming together. And that helps us begin to accept and acknowledge that there's a transition. But grieving can be for a lifetime, right? And so the things that we do to remember and commemorate this person. So you can still do these things in this time. So right now, if you're postponing a funeral, or it might become a memorial service, you can still plan for that memorial service. And what does that mean for the immediate? What are the rituals that you can still uphold, whether it's in your home or if you're allowed to go to the funeral home with a small group? What is it that you want to do, and what can you construct for yourself that will be meaningful to you? Do you want to live stream your pastor giving a message that would happen in a funeral? Do you want to be able to maybe have a Facebook Live of different people talking about your loved one that would happen in a funeral. So, use the technology, use your creativity of what you can do. Do you want to go outside and let off a balloon? Do you want to stand out and hold, a candle and say,
right.
So just think about the ways that you can still honor that life, and do it. Have the freedom. Give yourself the permission to do that. And then if you want to still have a bigger service, can you plan a memorial for that, for your loved one?
That's what I'm hearing a lot of my colleagues in ministry are doing, is they're doing a graveside with the family right now, and then planning a memorial when this all is done with and stuff. But the Facebook Live and those ideas are great too, because actually there's advantages to that, because you can record those things and save it for posterity. A lot of times people will have an event that may not be recorded, and then it's kind of, you just got these fuzzy memories of it. Thank you so much for all your time on this. I want to encourage our OBC members, if you have additional questions for Ronnie, to email me. We're probably going to do this again.
Yes.
And so email me, and I will incorporate those questions into our next interview. But Ronnie, thank you so much for your time and for the blessing that you are to OBC. We really appreciate you very much. So
thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be a part of this wonderful church and community. And just remember, in this time, think about how can you nourish your soul, because at the end of the day, it's our soul that lives forever. So making sure that you're feeding it and nourishing it and doing what we need for how you want to spend eternity. That's the most important thing you can do with your time right now, is care for your soul.
Amen. That's a great way to close it out. So thank you. God bless everyone. And thanks for watching. And again, Ronnie, thank you. And we'll catch you next time. God bless.
Bye.